It is, huh, bro? What up? What up? Haven't seen you in like a week and a half. Okay. Where'd you go camping? Oh, God. The fire marshal. There's so many. It doesn't mean we have to go to the same route. It just means we're going to hit safe. We're walking over here. Yeah, here you go. Talk more in the morning. Well, I don't know what you told you, but she had cancer since she was majorly short of breath. In ICU, they found that she's got a pulmonary heart. And they told Katie, with that is a risk of stroke. The next day, nuts. The entire right side, still on the ventilator. Her husband said, if we don't see an improvement, we'll put this one medical test back.
Good evening. I'll have everybody take their seats. Today is Thursday, March 12th. This is the Board of Directors regular meeting. I call this meeting to order. We're going to start off with the pledge to the flag. Director Wood, will you please lead us?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Metro Cable announcement. The open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14, replay on Sunday, March 15th at 9 a.m., and Monday, March 16th at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. Webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district's website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. This is now the public's opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the district's jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We do have one speaker during public comment, Mr. Daniel Iniguez, if you would please join us at the podium. And I will remind you that there is a 3-minute timer. You'll find that in the left-hand corner of the podium there.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, President Sheets, Directors, Chief Harms. My name is Daniel Iniguez. I am the Operations Manager for American Medical Response in Sacramento. I just want to take a moment this evening to thank the district, thank the department at Sac Metro Fire. It's been our honor at AMR to serve alongside of you in this district for the past 25 years. We greatly appreciate your partnership for all these years. It honors us to be a part of this partnership, and we greatly hope to continue to serve the district and Metro Fire in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? No? Thank you, sir. Moving on to the consent items.
Chair, I would like to move the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you please call roll?
Director Rosali. Wood.
Aye.
Sailors. Aye. Clark.
Aye.
Jones. Aye. And Sheets.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to our presentation item, overview of the ALS ambulance service and RFP 19-05 process. Chief Casantini and Mr. Jones.
Should be Chief Shannon.
Oh, sorry.
I would kind of look alike, but
They all look alike.
thank you. Thank you for that. Good evening, President Sheets and Board. Brian Shannon, Deputy Chief Support Services. I'm in front of you tonight to kick off this presentation item, an overview of the ALS Ambulance Service RFP 19-05 process. As you're aware from Mark Jones' previous board presentation, this RFP process started approximately 4 months ago. With lots of coordination, cooperation, and hard work from Metro Fire staff, we are here in front of you tonight. We have two presenters tonight. Chief Harms will open with an overview of our EMS operations, some district-wide considerations, and our district needs. Logistics and Purchasing Manager Mark Jones will then speak and focus on the process of the RFP. Chief Harms will then make the closing remarks after Mark gets done with his presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Harms.
Good evening, directors. Melissa's handing out an overview of the PowerPoint that we're going to go in case you wanted to take any notes or anything along the way. Tonight, what we're going to do is a presentation that has kind of about the overview of emergency operations within the district on the medical side. We're going to talk about some considerations across the district of kind of where we currently are and some goals of where we want to be as we move forward. As Chief Shannon said, we're going to talk about the actual RFP process. Mr. Jones will do that portion of it, and then we'll talk about some recommendations at the end of it. When we look at the RFP for ambulance service, the district has not gone out for RFP for ambulance. There's not completed an RFP for ALS ambulance surge protection since 2000. As we move forward with this one today, we're looking for a single contract, provide 6 ambulances, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, for a minimum of 26,280 unit hours. Each unit is going to be staffed with 1 paramedic and 1 EMT, or 2 paramedics onto those units that we're looking at. Really a major portion of the ALS ambulance service RFP is to give us additional latitude as far as deployment and additional opportunities as we have changes throughout the district. 2019 EMS operations. In 2019, we ran just over 80,000 calls for EMS services. We did 51,558 total transports. Of those transports, 46,955 were completed by Metro Fire medics, whether that would be a fire-based or an SRP unit, and AMR completed 4,603 transports, or just about 9% of the total transports. One of the things that is tied into our EMS transport is the revenue or the collections. And you can see on there I put $39.4 million estimated collections. We usually run off of our budget year, but if you look at 2019, we're about $39 million that is in there. The other thing that is included in that estimate is that we have our normal rates that we charge, the IGT, the GEMT, but if you remember at the end of 18 and the start of the 19, we had a program that was called the QAF, which was another additional funding mechanism that helped us with our Medicare transports. That has become more difficult to account for because it comes in with each payment along the way. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of firefighter math, but if we take the 51,000 transports and we divide it by the $39 million that we got, it's about $764 per transport is what our collections are. And as we talk further, I'll talk more about that number as far as opportunities. A couple other calls, additionals with the EMS numbers. We were canceled about 6,700 times. Assist, which included other agencies, about 2,100 times. No patients found, 9,300 times. Unfortunately, dead on arrival, 876, and about 7,200 refusals, again, for a total of over 80,000 calls in 2019. To cover those calls and those 50,000 transports, currently what we're staffing is that we have 14 24-hour firefighter paramedic units. We have 2 part-time flex medics, which are firefighter paramedic units. They're done on overtime, and they run 12 hours a day. And so those, typically what we have done is we've provided over the last 3 years, 6 months of funding. We put them in service right after the first of the year is our typical flu season, where we see our call volume go up and our transports go up. We also had an opportunity to try one additional 24-hour medic, and this one is EMS 20, or it's Medic 224. Right now we're running a pilot. It's going for 3 months. It's fire-based, so it's firefighter paramedic. We had enough funding to be able to put it in for 3 months, and we're running 2 ambulances out of Station 24. Really what we wanted to see was, when we talked a lot with labor on this, was do we want to put 2 separate ambulances in for 12 hours a day, or 1 ambulance for 24 hours, and then look at the call volume. We were requested to do 24 hours. That area is just very busy. With 2 ambulances, they're still both running 16 calls a day. So the call volume portions of it probably would have been the same if it was 12 hours, or if you look at 24 hours, the amount that's there. Currently, we are running 4 single-roll ambulances. Those are 24 hours a day with the single-roll program, and we have 4 AMR units that are 12 hours a day that are there. There's a lot of conversations about the different medics and different medic makeups. From a fire chief point of view, if you look at the fire-based medics, it gives us the best or the most options for deployments. So you have people that are cross-trained, they have full turnouts, they have an SCBA, the staffing in the district with 3-person engine companies. You can have that medic unit that is there and also supplement the crew that is there, whether it be a fire operation or an accident or any other event. The single role program has been in place for a number of years. They provide excellent service out there, but they truly are a single role EMS provider. But the great thing about the single role program has been how many people have come in that program and then has gone on into our academy and have been successful members as firefighters within our organization. This is a little bit hard to see. You guys can see it on your monitor here. And it talks about our unit responses, the amount of transports, and then utilization. And I think this is one of the things, Chief Bridge gets up each week and we talk about ambulances and we talk about our system and how busy it is. You can see there, Engine 24 at this snapshot of this day ran 20 calls that day. Medic 53 ran 18 calls, 7 transports. Then the utilization was 530 minutes. Medic 224, 16, 6, and 503. We look at call volume, but it's real important we look at utilization, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about utilization in just a little bit here as we move forward. ALS ambulance service contract. When I arrived here in 2016, the district, along with AMR, had just begun a contract and was just finishing up for 4 units per day. And what had happened in the past was that AMR had provided ambulance service as needed as the district had gotten busier. The district was actually looking at about a $2.5 million revenue shortfall and had gone into a contract that went from just usage, in which AMR would bill for the transport, to the unit hour that we use today. It provided 4 units, 12 hours a day, started off at $119 per hour. It increased resources every single day on the street for 12 hours. It improved peak time coverage. It decreased ISRM usage, and ISRM is an in-service reserve medic. So if you think of Station 27, there's an engine company there and there's an ambulance there. At certain times, when it's extremely busy, the members on the engine would take the ambulance and go into service. It gives you additional ambulances, but if you think about how peak time works, companies are busy and now you're taking another engine company out of service. And with wall time, response times, now you're looking at a service level lower, not only with your ambulances, but also with that engine company. And by doing the contract, it reduced the lost transport revenue that was there. In 2019, we did an extension of those 4 medics, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Each medic is still averaging about 6.23 calls per day, 69% transport rate. And the current rate for that contract is $142.81 per hour. Another important factor when you look at our ambulance service here and our ambulance service across the region is how many times do we leave the district and provide service outside, and how many times does somebody come into the district and provide service. When you look at the fire service and operation and best practices, having a system like us where you have 4 cities that border each other, and have the boundary drop and be in the same dispatching center provides the best customer service you possibly can that is out there. So disregard of who it is, the closest vehicle responds on that call. I think though as a district, it's important to us to look and say how many times are we going out, how many times are we coming in, what impact is that having to our system. So looking right there, in 2019, Metro Fire responded out to other agencies 8,116 times, and that totaled just over 4,000 transports. So going back to that firefighter math that I had before, and just don't look at Amanda over there because it doesn't fit with hers. But if you just look at that firefighter math on there, that's about $3.5 million of possible revenue that was brought into the district. You look at the main players that were in there. We went to the city of Sacramento about 6,680 times and did about 3,300 transports, or about 18 calls a day. Consumnes, just over 1,000 calls and about 560 transports, or about 3 times per day. Folsom, 213 times and 100 transports, and that's about just less than a call a day. The important factor to look at there was in the end of 18, Folsom put a medic at Station 36. Station 36 borders, if you think about what I would call the northeast portion of our district up there right next to Folsom. It was on our side, so it borders up against Station 22, Station 29, in that area up in there. So obviously you'll see in a second, they're coming into our district quite a bit. 145 other agencies is just across the region, whether you're going down towards some of the other areas, and less than a call a day. But we provide service 22 times a day outside of the district to our surrounding neighbors. The next one is to look at is how often do other agencies respond into Metro. In 2019, 8,528 times outside agencies responded into Metro, and that accounted for about 4,600 transports. Again, looking at firefighter math, you're talking about just over $4 million in revenue that went to the outside agencies. With the city responded in about 5,200 calls, and it had about 2,600 transports out of the district, or about 14 times a day. Consumers came in just over 1,200 times a day, or a year, with about 781 transports, or about 3.4 calls. And you can see the biggest change was with Folsom coming in that location into the district almost 2,000 times with 1,200 transports, and about 3 times a day other agencies are doing some type of transports. So outside agencies provided resources to the district 26 times a day as far as EMS transports. Now looking forward to future considerations. If you look at our goals as we move forward, and part of not just the RFP that's here tonight, but overall goals for the district, we look at number one is how do we decrease our call volume or the utilization rates that we talked about on the medics. So we talk a lot about Medic 53. In this snapshot, Medic 53 ran 18 calls in a 24-hour shift, and they had a utilization of 530 minutes. So it's a very busy unit, but if you look at the next one down, Medic 61 ran 11 calls in 24 hours, but their utilization was at 757 minutes. So it tells you that their transport times are longer, their out-of-service times were longer, geographically where they are, where they had to go to a hospital. So what we try to do is look at those and say, how can we make an impact? And those impacts would be, how do we increase that service delivery capability by putting additional units to be able to do the coverage? Management of response times is, as we look at our response time, our goal is 8 minutes. How do we improve that response time as far as across the district? Definite decreased utilization of the ISRMs. And for me, you know, if we have an ambulance down the street and it's a critical patient, the ability to get that patient transported, I'm okay with that. But to be able to use it just as part of the day in and day out, it becomes, again, that draw on that area. And then if you look at increasing training times, if you look at Medic 61, they show up, they do a little bit of drill time, and really for the rest of the day, most of their activity is going to be in that vehicle managing calls around the district. We look at standards of coverage across there, and one of the things when we've been looking at it, and Chief Bridge and the operations have been spending some time with it, which is what's our need? And how can we take, and we have a program called Deccan that allows us to add units, and what impact would it have? Right now, as we move forward, and we'll have a preliminary budget, but as we go forward into this next year here, we would like to be able to add, or look at being able to add 5 additional medics strategically located across the district, help us in managing that call volume, that wall time, decrease the outside city response when we look at that revenue or that outside cities that are coming into the district, management of our response time. Another one with Chief Wagaman, we've been looking at dispatch and how do we efficiencies and additional efficiencies. So very easily what we do is we look at dispatches and we look at times where less than 50% of the time that we're sending an ambulance are we transporting. And then going out of that and looking how critical are those patients. And are there times where we can send a single engine or a truck company, and then if needed, we'll send an ambulance. And then provide better geographical coverage across the district as we move forward. This one here is part of the program that Chief Bridge and his group has been using. And if you look at this here, anything obviously in red is the high call volume. Each one of those little squares that you see is about a quarter mile. And each one of those different colors that are in there would be the call volume. And as predicted, down to the southern portion down there by 53s is very high. Battalion 7 typically, again, is one of those areas where probably 45 to 50% of the calls in the district are ran, all the way up to the kind of right along that 80 corridor all the way along there. So when we look at that, we can start looking at that and saying, okay, here is our call volume, and here is the density of those call volumes across the district. The next thing we look at then, so we know where our calls are, the next thing we have to look at and say, our goal for that first in medic is 8 minutes. This map here shows the average response time. And our average response time is 7 minutes and 41 seconds. And you can see, again, the red area is the area where we have the longest response. And if you look at the highest green, those are our lowest response. The problem that I have with when you look at average response time, it takes all 300 square miles and throws it into a bucket and says, here's your average time. So 8 minutes is our target. We're at 7:41, looks pretty good. But we also know that there's other areas that it's taken us a lot longer to get to, and some of those areas that we get to really quickly. This next one shows the same thing, 8 minutes, but it's on the percentage of compliance. So what is that percentage of times that we would get there? And you can see it starts to drop now. It's less than 60%, and it's 59%. So again, looking at this, now we can start to look at that and say, how do we deploy our medics for really our goals that we talked about as far as coverage, response times, being able to look at the call volume of very high medics, and how can we find those places to be able to go? This run that Chief Bridge did is adding 4 medics into the system. And it says if you put them at station 117, 21, 28, and 103, it tells you about what they think it will run as far as the call volume. And then if you look down there right below it, it talks about the impact. So medic 21, 23, 25, and 32 all have a very positive impact as far as reducing the call volume or the call load on those units there. So there's a little bit that you use on the computer side, and then there's a part that you use as far as the membership, knowing the system and where is the best place to put those resources. Chief Shannon talked a while ago when we came in and we talked about our stations. There are certain places we would love to be able to put multiple medics or be able to put medics into. Something like a program like this would say this is the best place to put it. The reality is that there's no room in that station to be able to do it, or we'll have to go to the next station over just because we don't have enough room for people to live, to sleep, to have apparatus, to have those things. And so it's a little bit of using the computer and then using the expertise of the district. Here is, if you look at it and you added 4 additional medics, you can see how you start to change colors. And you still have some areas, but a lot of the areas start to be, as far as your percentage of response time starts to improve. The other one here, and unfortunately it turned out just a little bit fuzzy, but when I talk about the area along the Folsom border, along the upper left there where you see Station 29 and Station 22. Again, we know that there's probably over 1,000 calls, transports that are in that area that we are not able to capture. And if you look at it like an area down there at Station 53, again, we have a lot of resources down there, but it's so very high call volume. So the ability to take what the computer recognizes, the limitations that we have, and then we be able to take it and look at geographical and the needs of the district. Now we start to say, if we have additional medics, where are we going to put those medics at, and how are we going to cover those areas that, one, best fits the district as far as response and service delivery, and two, is on our revenue collection portions of it. The last thing that I'll talk about is about unit hour cost and the ability to look at what our unit hour costs are along with what we're currently paying. A 24-hour fire-based paramedic unit is $250 per hour. A part-time flex medic is about $240 per hour. This goes right along as when Amanda sits and talks with us and we talk about the difference between a full-time employee with benefits versus paying somebody overtime. In my career, I've seen it go both ways, is that it was cheaper to have full-time people. Then it became cheaper to hire to hire people on overtime. As you can see here, at this point, it's pretty close as far as a push on the hourly rate here. Our single rolls are at $189. Our current AMR contract is at $142 per hour. The important side of this is that there's a number of different ways to be able to look at the costing mechanisms of what is the cost. With this one here, along with the contract side of it, what we've been able to do is go through and say, okay, what is the hourly wage, the benefits, what are the extra incentives that are added into it, what are the costs for the district, what are the costs for the apparatus, the fuel, the depreciation of those apparatus, and then some of the management and administrative and professional staff that keeps the system moving forward, and then all of it is built in. Whether it's AMR on this portion of the contract or the other agencies that came forward, each person had to add those things into their proposals as we move forward. That ends my portion right now, and the next portion will be Mark, who will talk about the RFP process.
Thank you, Chief Harms. Good evening, directors. I'm Mark Jones, Logistics and Purchasing Manager for the district. I'm here tonight to present you information on our Advanced Life Support Ambulance Services RFP 1915. In November of 2019, the Purchasing Division, along with our EMS Division, drafted RFP 1915. The final draft was reviewed by the district's legal counsel and was approved for publishing. On December 9th, 2019, Purchasing published the RFP. The notification was listed on the public purchase website, and a notification was posted on our district website. We reached out to the California Ambulance Association directly, and we notified them. We also sent the document to personally to 44 ambulance companies throughout California. The document had detailed scope of services and a list of minimum qualifications required in order to be eligible to submit a proposal for review. There was a deadline of December 15th to submit written questions about the bid proposal, and we received 3 questions, and those questions and answers were posted publicly on December 20th. The deadline to submit a proposal was January 10th, 2020, with a proposal opening that same day. The RFP process followed the district's purchasing policy, and this process was managed by our purchasing staff. A panel of 4 evaluators was assembled, 2 from our agency and 2 from outside fire departments. We received 3 proposals from area providers: Falk Ambulance, Medic Ambulance, and AMR Ambulance. Each proposer was required to follow a submittal format in order to better evaluate the proposals. The evaluators were given a copy of each proposals and were instructed to review each section of their proposals side by side. A written set of instructions was given to each evaluator that covered 8 specific criteria areas of the proposals. This criteria was listed in the proposal document as well. Each evaluator was instructed to review and evaluate the proposals independently without discussing with the other evaluators. They had approximately 2 weeks to review and score the proposals. On January 27th, a panel of evaluators convened to review and compare scores. The scores were based on a 10-point scale with instructions defining the scale. Out of 96 scores, there were only 3 instances where an evaluator had a different score of 3 points. That particular criteria was discussed, reviewed again, and if needed, an adjustment was made according to the facts submitted in their proposals. The scores were then tabulated, and they came out. AMR was at 80.125, Medic was at 66.375, and Falk was at 54.625. Next, we invited all firms to an oral interview on January 11th. All 3 firms were given a list of 16 questions to respond to. Before the oral interviews, the same panel of evaluators were given another written set of instructions to score the oral interview. There were 5 criteria related to the 16 questions. Excuse me. After the interview panel, evaluators worked independently at first to score. All were finished, the scores were compared, and all scores were even or within 1 point of each other. The scores were then tabulated, and the result of the oral interview, AMR 87.75, Medic 69.93, and Falk 51. The combined scores and oral score, the written scores and oral scores combined out of 100 are as follows. AMR, the written was 80% of the total, and the oral score was 20% of the total to equal 100%. AMR was 81.65, Medic was 66.97, and Falk was 53.90. The next step was a meeting with the 2 top-ranked proposers, and then the top-ranked proposer and the second-ranked proposer. We discussed an overview of what was important to the district, similar to what you saw tonight, and our EMS service to the public. We discussed future needs to the district we'll be facing regarding EMS services. We asked the 2 proposers if there was any room in their operations to come down in their bottom line unit hour cost. This was the cost that was submitted in the proposals for the first year. AMR was at $154.53 unit hour cost. Medic was at $134 for year 1, and Falk was at $171 for year 1. All 3 of them incrementally went up a little bit each year for the next 3 years. We asked the proposers for their best and final unit hour cost offer. AMR came down to $149, and Medic stayed at their best and final offer. They held firm their submitted price. However, they stated that they would assess after 1 year to see if there could be any cost savings. This information was given to senior staff in an evaluation summary for their review and a recommendation to the board. And that was the overview of the process. And I'll turn it back over to Chief Arms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. As the fire chief, I'm anticipating on March 26th at our next meeting, based on the information I have received, recommending that Metro Fire awards a 3-year agreement to AMR Ambulance with 2 optional 1-year extension for award of RFP 19-15. AMR scored the top position for the overall evaluation. Again, there is no other action that is needed tonight, but myself or Mark or Brian are available now if you have any questions.
Are there any questions from the board members? Yes, Director Rosali.
Thank you for the presentation. This was very helpful. Chief, the bid for Medic is less per unit hour than AMR. AMR's score is higher in the qualifications. I would expect some discussion about the delta between those 2. We're clearly deciding that the score for service is more important than the unit cost per hour. Is that a good assessment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, are there any public comments or questions?
We do have 4 speakers related to this item. I will begin calling them one by one if they could join us at the podium. The first is Mr. James Pearson. And while you're on your way, I'll remind you that we are observing the same 3-minute public comment rule that applies to any public comments.
President Sheets, board members, Chief Harms, Just wanted, James Pearson, President and COO of Medic Ambulance. Wanted to thank you guys for the process. Obviously submitted the speaker card unknowing how it was going to go and had different speeches set. But I do want to thank you guys for putting it out for bid and allowing the competition for this process 1915. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Mr. Ryan Sack. Am I pronouncing that last name correctly?
I'm okay, thank you.
Mr. Jacob Mendenhall.
Hello, my name is Jake Mendenhall. I'm paramedic supervisor with Medic Ambulance. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet and say thank you guys for the time and consideration in this RFP process, and we appreciate it most definitely. So,
Thank you.
And the final speaker is Mr. Mark Mendenhall.
Good evening. First and foremost, thank you for hearing us tonight and having us tonight. We appreciate it. I do want to talk a little bit. My name is Mark Mendenhall. I'm the operations manager for our Sacramento division of Medic Ambulance. I want to talk about what the district would get with Medic Ambulance, and if this process represents itself in years to come, things to consider on what you're getting with Medic Ambulance service. A 40-year rich history of a family-owned and operated business, operating with unwavering commitment and quality patient care. This, not only the family, but the company is patient-focused. Having public-private partnerships is not new to us. It's what we do. We have several partnerships with the districts Benicia, Dixon, Fairfield, Vallejo, many other districts as well that are extremely happy with our service, and we work effectively and efficiently with on a daily basis, making sure that our patients come first. Medic's always on the cutting edge of what's new, what's next, what are the advancements in technology to help our staff be best prepared for any emergency they might face. So again, thank you for considering us in the RFP. I understand AMR had the highest score. I hope you guys will take all things into consideration, and if not throughout this process, please highly consider us for the next process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, this is the presentation item. No action is required. So we're moving on to the action items. First one is FY 2019 State Homeland Security Grant Program Award. Mrs. Jones.
Good evening, Board of Directors. I'm Marie Jones, and I am the other half of your grant team here at Metro Fire. Tonight, it's an honor to present the grant award for SHISH Gap 19. That's a state Homeland Security grant through Sacramento County OES. In this application, we applied for 2 grants, both boat-related. One was a flood response boat program, which includes aluminum boats, PPE equipment for rescue, and supplies. In addition, that has a trailer to hold all those supplies. The other application was for a swift water boat. This is a boat like the grants we received previously in SHISH Gap 13 and 14, that regional grant that we distributed within the region. This is the 6th and final boat for that project. That's all I have for you. The grant, the total project is $186,000, $23 some change, and it was funded 100%. And I'll answer any questions if you may have.
Any questions, comments? Director Rosali?
Marie, this isn't a question. This is just a commendation for the work that you've done on bringing this together. I work with you on a regular basis, and I know how dedicated you are, and I truly appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Any others?
Madam Chair, I'll move the recommendation.
I second.
Great, we have a first and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Director Orzali.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Sailors.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
And Sheets.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to action item number 2, fiscal year 2019-20 mid-year budget. Amanda Thomas.
Good evening, directors, Chief Harms. Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer, and I'm here this evening to present recommended mid-year budget adjustments for fiscal year 2019-20. So just an overview and reminder, our mid-year adjustments are based on our second quarter budget review. So we're looking at actual results for revenues and expenses through December 31st, 2019, and then projections for the remainder of the year when we make those adjustments. The mid-year adjustments that I'll be presenting to you this evening were presented to the Finance Committee on February 28th, and the only adjustment that was made since then is the addition of the grant that you just approved, so luckily you approved it. We anticipated that. And it's in the grants fund budget that we are recommending this evening. Overall, the general fund budget maintains a $1 million use of reserves for one-time expenditures. So if you'll remember from our preliminary and final budget presentations, that's related to the replacement of SCBA's that was completed this year. So that was a $1 million kind of one-time use of reserves. And although we had lots of pluses and minuses through the mid-year budget process, we kind of ended up at the same place in terms of a bottom line. And I'll obviously go into that in a little bit more detail. The biggest change that we did see is a reduction in deployment activity. So what's interesting is if you'll remember a couple of years ago, we used to not include deployment activity at all until we got to mid-year, and then we would have a big change at mid-year because we hadn't included anything. So the last couple of years we started including some assumptions based on recent history, and it turns out this year was not at all like recent history. So we have a big adjustment at mid-year for a different reason. So this table is just a summary of the general fund budget. And my presentation this evening really is going to focus on the general fund because that's where most of the changes are that we're recommending. But looking at this, you can see in that first subtotal there, our total revenues. We're going from a current final budget of about $218 million to a recommended mid-year budget of $215.2 million. So overall, a $2.8 million reduction in revenues. But then if you go and look down at expenditures, you can see here going from expenditures current budget of 221.3 down to down to 218.5. So we have about a $2.8 million reduction in expenditures that's offsetting that reduction in revenues. No changes to the transfers in and out of other funds. So really, as I said, when you go and look down at the bottom line, we only have about a $20,000 improvement there in the overall bottom line, still about a $1 million use of reserves. So looking a little bit more detail at the general fund revenue, mentioned that was a $2.8 million reduction. Deployment revenue alone is a $5 million reduction based on substantially less activity than what we had anticipated and what we'd seen in prior years. That, of course, gets largely offset by a reduction in labor expenditures, right? So we don't have that overtime cost and we don't have the revenue. That's not a one-for-one because we have admin rates and other things that we are recovering in revenues. So the expenditure reduction is only about $3.9 million. However, that reduction in revenue was offset by an increase that we're recommending in medic cost recovery revenue of about $1.6 million increase, just based on how our revenues are trending so far year to date. We think that we can expect more revenue than originally budgeted there. So turning to look at expenditures, labor costs overall, it's a $2.7 million decrease in our labor budget to $184.2 million we're recommending. As I mentioned, deployments result in a $3.9 million reduction. However, that reduction is offset somewhat by an overall net increase of about $1.4 million in our callback overtime. So that's adjusting for the fact that we have this change in deployments. Also taking into consideration that we have some savings in terms of full-time position vacancies, and there's also some movement of some overtime costs between our callback and our shift overtime line. But when you consider all of those factors together, it's about a $1.4 million overall increase that's offsetting that $3.9 million reduction. I did want to mention that there are two proposed position changes included in the budget, the addition of a deputy fire marshal position and the reallocation of an economic development manager to chief development officer. Looking at other general fund expenditures, services and supplies, we're recommending a decrease of about $145,000. That's really among several different accounts, and obviously some pluses and minuses there as well, but overall a total of $29.7 million in services and supplies expenditures. Our taxes, licenses, debt service, and others are essentially unchanged at $4.6 million, and as I mentioned, our transfers in and our transfers out also unchanged. So looking at our general fund reserves, as I mentioned, the adjustments don't change the overall result. So we're maintaining a $1 million use of reserves. However, based on our audited starting reserve balance, we have a different projection for an ending number and a reserve percentage. So we're now projecting as of June 30, 2020, based on this budget, that our reserve would be $30 million or 14% of net budgeted expenditures. So we are getting very close to that 15% target, minimum target. So, in summary, the recommendation is approval of the resolutions adopting the mid-year budget amendments for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. And I also wanted to point out and mention we do have an additional recommendation this time around, which is for the approval of the fiscal year 1920 pay schedule. This is something that's always included in the budget document, but we're now going to be adding it as an additional recommendation to be approved, and this is really to comply with some recent guidance that we've gotten from CalPERS in terms of how they would like to see these things approved and agendized. So that's why you see the addition of that recommendation. And that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yes, Director.
I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and make that point about getting to our elusive 15% reserve. That's wonderful work, and it's something that has been important to me for a long time. I really appreciate all the effort that is taken on behalf of you and the chief and all of the staff to get there, because the reserves are critically important. So thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move Resolution 2019-2020 for operating mid-year budget for the General Operating Fund 212A.
Second.
Great. Will you please call roll?
Director Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Sailors?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I'd move item B, Resolution 2019-2020 mid-year budget for the Capital Facilities Fund 212D.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Director Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Sailors?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I'd move Resolution C, 2019-2020 mid-year budget for the Grants Fund 212G.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Director Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Sailors?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I'll move Resolution D, 2019-2020 mid-year budget for the Development Impact Fees Fund 212I.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Director Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Sailors?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I'd move Resolution E, 2019-2020 mid-year budget for the leased properties fund 212L.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Director Orzali? Wood?
Aye.
Sailors? Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I'll move Resolution F, 2019-2020 pay schedule for employees.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Director Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Sailors?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to action item number 3, Board Vacancy Division 9, and I will turn it over to you.
Good evening, President Sheets and directors. The item we're going to talk about is the vacancy we have in Division 9. It is not often that we see a vacancy like this, so I will remind you the last time we did this was in 2015. The board opted to open it up to district-wide with preference given to those living in the division. That was Division 1 at the time. During the application period, we received 6 applications, 3 of which lived in the division. So talking a little bit about the government code that governs this process, Government Code 1780 allows for our board to make this appointment within 60 days of the vacancy. Looking at the calendar, that puts us at a deadline of April 27th. A couple of things to take into consideration this evening. Our requirements within that government code. The first, the notification needs to be sent to the Sacramento County Elections Office within 15 days. That has been completed. Looking to the next requirement, our board meeting tonight, we're going to decide whether we're going to open this up to just Division 9 or if it's going to be district-wide, which would allow for more candidates to apply. However, giving consideration to those applicants who may live in Division 9. And then we're going to set the special meeting date. Right now, staff is recommending that special meeting to take the place of our regular meeting on Thursday, April 9th. During that time, we will interview candidates, make the appointment, and administer the oath of office. Provided those are agreed to items tonight, I'm going to post the vacancy notice in 3 locations. We're going to post it downstairs on the bulletin board at each of the stations within Division 9. We will post it on our website, and I'll also work with the public information officer to push the information on our social media pages. We're going to give a deadline for submission for the letters of interest and resumes. So if those notices are posted on Monday, the 16th, that's going to be more than the 15 days required to have that notification posted and allow for submissions by April 3rd. That way, going into the board meeting on April 9th, we'll know how many candidates will be at that special meeting for interview. And then on April 9th, we will have that special meeting. And that is going to be well within the 60-day requirement of April 27th. A couple of things to note. The successful candidate will serve in this position for the remainder of the 2020 term. So they will be a short-term director. And then when the election comes up this year, that seat will be on the ballot. So if this person selected during the appointment process chooses to run and lives in Division 9, they will be the incumbent. Then when the election takes place, the successful candidate will serve the remainder of the 4-year term, which is 2 years, and that will be a short-term seat, and then it will resume the regular schedule of election. I know it's a lot of information. I did have a draft announcement included in your packet, and I'll just remind everyone that we are deciding tonight on the two highlighted sections. The first, whether we're going to open it up to the entire district, those living in the district, and then schedule the meeting that we will be interviewing these candidates. I would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? Director?
So, as I understand, we have an appointment, so we go through that process. That person serves out the remainder of the term, and then goes at the next juncture, goes into a regular election. Is that right?
The appointed candidate, the successful candidate that this board appoints will serve until November 2020. And that seat will be on the election ballot for November 2020. Normally, Division 9 would not be up for election this term. So that's what makes it a short term. That successful person in the general election will serve for the 2 years remaining on that seat.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Jones?
Thank you, Madam President. The 60-day requirement is there because on the 61st day, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is that means that the County Board of Supervisors can appoint. So as we have done in the past, I would recommend to this board that we open it up to district-wide potential, just in case we do not get someone from District 9. And that way, our board carries the authority to appoint someone. And again, it is short-term. And thank you so much for getting all these details and deadlines together. One comment, if someone is appointed, or when someone is appointed to a board, when they do run for election, they cannot put incumbent on their ballot sheet. They need to put appointed. So that is a pretty big distinction when you get into elections. So hopefully everyone who applies understands that. And I would make a motion that we open this up district-wide with, as always, the emphasis and priority given to folks who live in Division 9. I'll second that.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Director Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Sailors?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
I would also recommend a motion for the special meeting date, so that is what will govern some of those deadlines we talked about.
Second.
Great. Will you please call the roll?
Director Orzali?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Sailors?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Sheets?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to reports. President report. I do not have anything to report. Fire Chief's report. Chief Arms?
A lot of talking happening over here tonight, isn't there? Just a few things. Battalion Chief Charlie Jenkins will become the Special Operations Battalion Chief on a special assignment here at headquarters on the 16th. Over the past few weeks, I've been out to a few stations. Station 106 on B shift, 50's on B shift, and Station 105 on C shift. Just getting out and seeing the membership and kind of hanging out a little bit. We had our Sacramento County Fire Chiefs meeting on March 2nd. Metro is the chair of the county fire chiefs during this year. So along with myself, the deputies and a number of staff people on the ACs all have roles during that time. March 7th, I went to the Firefighter Burn Institute Mardi Gras crab feed, which was very well attended and was a great event. And also on yesterday, we had a dedication of Station 65. Thank you to the directors that were there and the stand-in director that was there also for Fire Captain Jim Peterson. And that was the fourth one. And again, thank you to the board for allowing us and giving us the opportunity to do that. The attendance, both by current members and retirees, was just tremendous that was out there. Pete started his fire service career with the Citrus Heights Fire Protection District. He served as a resident firefighter for several years, then was hired full-time in 1988 at the age of 25. After 25 years as a firefighter, he was promoted fire captain on March 2008. Unfortunately, he was unable to return to work as a captain due to his illness at that time. Jim passed away on December 15, 2008, after a year-long battle with cancer. His name was also added to the IFF and the California Firefighter Memorial. His wife is a retired captain that was here. She was there along with some of his family and his two sons, and one of his sons is a new firefighter in Roseville, and so they were able to come and bring apparatus, so it was a very nice event. The other thing that I'll just talk about seems to be the COVID-19, and it definitely has been over the last few weeks and now here recently a lot of our activity. I saw Chief Law back there in the back of it. She is now the expert. She got up and went out, and I'm sure she went out and answered another phone call. But EMS Chief Law, the Operations Chief Bridge are just doing a tremendous job. And probably, I know some of you are also kind of dealing with different things on where you're working at. It has been challenging to keep up with changes and information and recommendations. One of our goals in the very beginning of it was to put out information as much as we can to the membership, reinforcing the precautions and then following the recommendations of either the CDC or county health. And again, when we have not had an answer, Chief Law has been great for being able to do that. Myself and the fire chiefs in the valley, we have some standing conference calls, the SCIMSA and the county health. We have some standing conference calls. And again, what we're trying to do is stay as much as we can out in front of it with the latest information that we have to protect our members. That ends my report unless you have any questions.
Any questions? Operations report, Chief Bridge.
Good evening, directors. Eric Bridge, Deputy Chief Operations. My report will be brief as well, as we've been dealing with the coronavirus and all the contingency planning associated with that. But just in terms of numbers, just so I want to stay consistent and keep you in the loop on who the busiest are. Once again, since the last board meeting, Engine 53 had about 200 responses, and our Medic 24 with 209 responses. So you'll hear that theme will probably stay consistent. But again, as I want to remind you, there's about 12 units, 12 engines, and 12 ambulances that are right there, and they're trading spots each week. So we also were, as Chief mentioned, Chief Law and the EMS staff have been doing just above and beyond work with this whole coronavirus and helping our members feel confident in our response to the County Department of Public Health. That can be challenging because it's so fluid. The situation is just moving every day. And we're not sure if we're chasing social media fears or if we're chasing the virus. I don't know which one we're chasing, but it's crazy. There is evidence of community transmission, and the decision was made for public health to transition from a containment phase, where each case is investigated for contacts and placed in isolation or quarantine, to a mitigation phase. That includes social distancing practices to slow the spread of the disease. So that's kind of where it's at now, and we've had a few of our members that, just to reassure them that we're taking care of the Department of Public Health in our occupational medicine as now providing testing for our members when they're symptomatic. So that's also a change, because before they were starting to test people that even weren't symptomatic. So they do test for three. They test for the influenza, they test for RSV, and then they test for COVID-19. So, and then at which point, generally the recommendation is kind of the same. Go home, wash your hands, and stay isolated away from family. So that's where we're at, and we're going to continue to be working almost around the clock with contingency planning in case more of our members get become infected and need to stay home. So we do have a plan for our community, and we are always ready and willing to step up and do that, and they continue to do that. So we'll work closely with Captain McGoldrick and 522 with this plan, as they're obviously going to be intimately involved with it. So we look forward to working some more. We got plans tomorrow, all day tomorrow, to do that. So that concludes my report, unless you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. Moving on to Firefighters Local 522, Mr. McGoldrick.
Good evening, Board and Chief. Just a couple little things tonight. I'd like to sincerely thank the board and the district for the station dedication program. I had the privilege to work with Jim Peterson at 65 for a couple of years. He wasn't only a good firefighter, he was an incredible person. And his passing also makes me reflect on the great changes we've made as an agency as far as personal protective equipment, multiple sets of gears, your actions at last board meeting and the actions of our logistics and our purchasing folks and all those on the safety committee meeting group in order to get us extra gear, hoods and gloves to limit our exposure. It's pretty important. Some of us who were hired early enough don't have the opportunity to take back time, but those that are coming on board now have a distinct advantage over us. I'd also like to publicly thank Director Barnes, now that he stepped down. I couldn't do it last meeting because he didn't make it official yet. He was great for the agency as a whole, and he's a good friend, and I look forward to helping him out in the future and his future endeavors. Regarding the medic contract, I truly understand the value of a public-private partnership. In the EMS system, it's important to have reinforcements outside our own abilities in order to mitigate problems. There are cause for concern from the labor side, only in the addition of the 2 additional medics. It very closely mimics our members that work on the Single World program. I think there's also valid reasoning, which I believe the chief believes in also, of the fire-based medic program. It's important. It is more expensive, as you saw tonight, but there is a value to that program. I hope moving forward that when we go to address the additional medic placements, that we strongly prioritize the fire-based medic. With the moving forward of the medic contract, as a labor organization, all that I ask is one thing that wasn't up there, that we look out for their employees just like we look out for our employees, wages, benefits, and working conditions. It's very important that we don't overstep some of those bounds in order to think about moving the district forward. That is all. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to committee and delegate reports. The executive committee, I have nothing to report, and no meeting to be determined. Communications Center, JPA. Chief Shannon.
Good evening again. And I have one thing to report. We met March 10th, one item report for the comm center. And I told Chief Wagaman I would say this with a big smile because that's what he told me to say. They are planning a dispatch academy starting in sometime around April 20th. We're looking at about 12 to 15 new employees for the comm center. It'll be an 8-week academy. And I was reminded that's going to be the biggest academy they've ever had. Yeah. So they have been running short. They are desperate need of some fresh faces and some new faces in the comm center. So hopefully in April we'll be able to get that moving, and they'll be on their way. And that's it for the comm center.
All right, California Fire Rescue Training JPA.
For the Rescue Training JPA, we have not met since January. Our next meeting will be April 16th across the hall.
Questions? All right. Finance and Audit Committee, Director Orzali.
Buttons are so complex. There's no report.
All right, I'll report out for Policy Committee. No meeting scheduled, next to be determined. We'll move on to board member questions and comments. Director Orzali, we'll start with you.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank the staff for all of the efforts it took to bring this bid in. I know this has been an arduous task. You did a fantastic job, in my opinion, the first go-round, and a fantasticer job in the second go-round. So thank you so much for all of that. And again, I want to thank the Finance Department for their efforts and their constant commitment to the fiscal stability of Metro Fire. Even though when I stop by and ask for a cup of money, I never get anything from you people. So thank you very much.
All right, Director Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Rosali said it more eloquently than I did, so just ditto. Thank you.
All right, Director Clark.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank all the presenters for their presentations and thank the men and women of Metro Fire for the fantastic job that they do day in and day out for our district.
Thank you. Director Jones.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank the fire chief for the ambulance service report. A very good presentation, Chief, on a very complicated issue, so thank you very much. Also, thank Mark Jones for taking us through the process. That, again, is another arduous endeavor. Thank you to Marie Jones and your team for the successful work on the grant programs. Keep the money rolling in. So I figure we got those pots of money, Director Orzali. There we go. Okay, CFO Thomas, presentation, thank you. I was impressed at the presentation given last meeting at the Finance Committee and again tonight. Thank you. I appreciated the turnout for the dedication in honor of Captain Peterson at Station 65 this previous week. Thank you all very, very much for participation and the respect shown at that event. Well, for everyone, I want to thank the fire chief, senior staff, and EMS chief Law for all this 24/7 work on coronavirus and the continual updates. And I very, very much appreciate we continue to work on evidence-based response. That is critical, and I appreciate each and every person's contribution in that effort.
Thank you. Director Sailors.
With such eloquence up here, everyone has said everything I was planning on saying, but I just wanted to say thank you for the presentations. I love the attention to detail. I love that. So thank you for all of those presentations. And to all the firefighters out there, please stay safe, wear your PPE, and see you next meeting. Thank you.
I have no comment. The next board meeting will be March 26th here in these chambers. This meeting is adjourned.